Hello everyone, and sorry about last month. I lost my voice and some of the cheeky ones around me say that was a blessing. Last month we discussed the outdoors, and in January we talked about what we see as being the trends for 2022. So this month I would like to continue with our trends and talk a little bit about wellness. Last week I actually did a lecture for the architectural design students at Curtin University on this particular topic, and it was interesting to learn that they actually cover a whole unit on wellbeing. So in a design sense, there is so much that both architects and interior designers can do to help develop spaces and options for our clients to contribute towards wellbeing in general. We certainly know there is evidence that suggests that a well-designed environment will reduce agitation, anxiety, conflict, confusion, depression, emotional disturbance, number of falls, intellectual deterioration, and restlessness. Evidence also suggests that a well-designed environment will improve a person's wayfinding, eating behaviours, motor function, use of toilet, pleasure, mobility, activities of daily living, and self-help skills. So you can see quite clearly that evidence does say that the environment can have a huge influence on the well-being of residents. What I would specifically like to talk about today, though, in a wellbeing sense, is what can we do to encourage family and visitors to spend more time visiting their relatives in aged care facilities. It stands to reason the more visitors a resident gets, the better it is for their overall well-being. And the flip side to that is it will have a flow-on effect and contribute to the well-being of not only other residents, but also the staff. Our subject or inspiration for this month is HoloCare Connect 40, which is connection and gifting platform. It's called Connect 40 because it is a sad fact that up to 40% of nursing home residents do not receive any visitors. So basically the idea is about brightening someone's day, and that obviously has to add to their well-being. It explores people's experience of kindness and gratitude and how that results in increased life satisfaction, optimism, extroversion, and lower stress levels. They say that through personalised gift giving, they aim to improve the lives of people living in nursing homes who don't have someone visiting or even acknowledging them on a regular basis. So that's a pretty nice idea. But what that says to me is, why do we have such a low rate of visitors? Why don't families want to come? And if they do, why don't they want to stay very long? Often people will make up excuses as to why they don't visit, and generally if you ask a few questions, you find out it's because it's not a very nice experience and there is nothing to do, and before too long you run out of conversation. I certainly know I've experienced that, not through my parents because unfortunately they passed away when I was only young, but I have experienced it with a couple of aunties, and it's very difficult sometimes to continue that conversation. So how can we make sure that the experience is enjoyable for family and visitors, and what can we do to encourage people to visit and stay longer? We know loneliness and boredom is an issue in aged care facilities, so if we get more people wanting to visit, surely it will create a much more active and vibrant space, and hopefully a more stimulating and enjoyable place for everybody to be. One of the issues I've been told by families is that there is nowhere to really take mum or dad when they get there, and that the visits tend to happen in the residents' general lounges or in their bedrooms. The bedrooms are fine, of course, because they are private, but where do you sit? What can you do, and how long before the conversation runs out? If you meet up in the lounge or dining room, it could mean disturbing other residents in their own home. In fact, one of the students last week asked me, "Debbie, what can I do in the situation that when I actually visit my granddad, he's generally sitting in the dining room or lounge with other people, and he tells me that it's too noisy, so he's going to turn off his hearing aid." And then, of course, we find it difficult to have a conversation. So I suggested that she try and take her granddad to another room that isn't as crowded so he can turn his hearing aid back on and have hopefully a nice visit. But sometimes there isn't anywhere else to go. So when designing facilities, it's always good to have a clear delineation between private and public spaces. But what I mean about private and public is really different to what generally is considered. Architects quite often look at three distinct areas: private, semi-private and public. So that will entail a bedroom that is private to an alcove or corridor, which is semi-private, to public, being the lounge or dining rooms and other areas. I look at it a little bit differently. Private to me is definitely the bedroom. Semi-private is the lounge dining spaces within the resident wings or houses. And public is all other spaces, generally spaces that I call front of house, which is the reception foyer, cafe, hairdresser, private dining room, outdoors, or anywhere that is a general area that everyone in the facility can use outside of their home. Now, it's not to say that, of course, you wouldn't visit within the resident's house, but in many instances, the public areas will generally be more comfortable for visitors, and also it will give the resident an opportunity for a change of scenery. So what can these spaces be, and what will it allow family and visitors to do in order to make it a more enjoyable visit? Sitting in a lounge room whilst other residents are trying to watch TV is not only annoying and uncomfortable for you, the visitor, but also the other residents, as the talk and chatter will interfere with their watching of the TV. So what will encourage you as a visitor to want to visit and stay longer? We've talked previously about 8 life elements, and that's a good start to consider how you can incorporate these elements into the design of your facility. But the design of these spaces will generally be somewhat site specific. So for instance, what would work in the city may not necessarily work in a rural setting, for example. And of course, it is much easier to consider the design if you're building new, as you're starting from a blank canvas. Existing facilities can be a little more tricky, but not unsurmountable. Now, of course, creating additional spaces in many instances could mean a bigger footprint and therefore additional dollars spent. Sometimes there is a fine line as to whether the new build will even stack up. How could you recuperate those costs? And the reality is, if it doesn't stack up, then it won't be built. However, it could mean something as simple as redefining spaces. One of my clients actually had spaces that were lettable, so that meant additional income. So sometimes we just need to think outside the box. So where to start? What are some of the things you could do? Certainly asking residents and families what they would like to see within the facility is a great start. Ask families what would encourage them to visit more, and ask residents what they would like to see. And if they can't articulate that, ask them what are the challenges when someone comes to visit them. Is it too noisy? Maybe they can't make a cup of tea easily. It could be a really simple thing that could be fixed today. Creating a vibrant community may not need additional spaces, but some creative thinking. Could you get the local community involved? Do you have a space that could be turned into a village green, for example, that could be used both by the general community and residents to enjoy? Of course, safety, security, and all of those things need to be considered. Craft and food markets. Could this happen in your village green? Could residents participate in making things for a craft stall and spend a Saturday morning once a month sitting with a relative selling their wares? This means the relative also has something to do, others to engage with, and a feeling of achievement for the resident. If you have a large space that is used for activities and therefore not used all the time, could it be offered to local groups, book clubs? Could a resident join, and could a family member be involved? I know I certainly would like to be part of a book club, and if I could then double that with a visit to a relative in an aged care facility, it means I can see them, do something I really want to do, and feel less guilty about not having time to visit. Could you have outdoor cinema and invite the local community for a gold coin donation? The kids could collect the gold coins as they do for schools for Saturday markets, and hopefully this is something volunteers would love to be involved with. Once again, something enjoyable for all to do. It then doesn't become a chore to visit an aging relative. So these are just some of the things to consider. What you can or can't do will of course depend on your facility, budget, and maybe site specific. It doesn't necessarily mean additional cost to the operator, but could mean additional opportunities. It might just need some creative thinking. We know that if we don't get more visitors coming into aged care, we will create more loneliness and isolation, which puts pressure on staff and also aged care organisations, and potentially can lead to bad publicity. Aged care, as we know, unfortunately has had some really bad publicity in the last few years, and sadly the general public really don't understand. But how can we change their thinking and the image of aged care? It does require some work, but I think at the end of the day, it will improve well-being for everyone. So as from next month, we will be interviewing some really amazing people that are not necessarily involved in the aged care sector, but may have something interesting to add to our sector. So thanks very much for listening. As always, if there is anything you particularly would like to hear about or chat to me about, please give me a call or email. Have a great month, and if we don't get our newsletter out before Easter, enjoy and don't eat too many Easter eggs. Bye for now.